When I said yes to marrying a man old enough to be my grandfather, I believe it was my only way to escape crushing debt and build a future as a gay man in America. What I didn't realize was that this decision would entangle me in a web of deception that had been spinning for 20 years. My name is Ethan Reed, 24 years old, and I was drowning. NYU law had seemed like the golden ticket out of the small Ohio town that had kicked me out the day I told my parents I was gay. Now I owed $150,000 in loans. My mother's medical bills were piling up, and my part-time barista shifts barely covered rent in a Queens walk-up. The only thing keeping me going was the dream of becoming a civil rights attorney who fought for kids like the scared teenager I once was. That night, at the alumni fundraiser in a glittering Midtown ballroom, I was only there because the dean had begged for volunteers. I wore my one good suit and tried to blend in while handing out name tags. Then Victor Langford walked in, 71, silver hair, perfectly styled, wearing a bespoke tuxedo that probably cost more than my entire education. Everyone knew the name, Langford Tech, the empire that powered half the apps on our phones. He was a legend, quietly gay after his husband of 30 years had passed, always generous with causes, but fiercely private. He caught my eye across the room and smiled like he already knew my story. 2 hours later, we stood on the private terrace overlooking the East River. "Ethan," he said, voice steady and warm, "I've watched you tonight. You carry the weight of the world on those shoulders. I have a proposition. Marry me. 1 year, renewable. I pay every cent of your debt, cover your mother's care, and give you a trust fund that lets you practice law without selling your soul. In return, you give me companionship, a public partner who makes me look less like a lonely old man. No expectations beyond that. Think of it as a business deal that saves us both." My heart slammed against my ribs. The man was offering freedom, but something in his steady gaze felt too calculated, like he had rehearsed this exact moment. I thought of my mother's tired voice on the phone, the eviction notice taped to my door, the way my father had said, "You're dead to me," when I came out. "Why me?" I asked. Victor shrugged. "Because you remind me of someone I lost. And because you need this as much as I do." I said yes before sunrise. The ceremony was 3 weeks later in a quiet judge's chambers in Connecticut. Legal, fast, no press. I signed the papers with shaking hands while Victor watched me with an expression I couldn't read. That night, in his sprawling Manhattan penthouse, we sat on the terrace with glasses of wine. "We'll tell people we fell in love at the fundraiser," he said softly. "No one needs the details." I nodded, but inside I was already wondering what I had just sold. The first month passed in a blur of movers boxing my old life and Victor's staff teaching me which fork to use. He never pushed, never crossed the line I had silently drawn. We shared dinners, talked about law and tech and the city lights. One evening, he showed me the photo of his late husband Michael on the mantel. "He would have liked you," Victor said. For the first time, I saw a real sadness in his eyes, and something inside me softened. Yet every time I looked in the mirror wearing one of the tailored suits he bought me, I felt the weight of the secret. I was a gay man who had just married for money. And somewhere deep down, I wondered if Victor had an agenda bigger than loneliness. But I pushed the thought away. I had a mother to save and a future to build. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Little did I know the air I was breathing had been poisoned long before I ever met him. The first 5 years felt like a dream I was afraid to wake from. Victor paid every debt within a week of the wedding. My mother's cancer treatment moved to the best hospital in Cleveland, and for the first time, she sounded hopeful on the phone. "Whoever this man is, Ethan, he saved us," she said. I didn't correct her that he had saved me too. I started as an associate at a small firm focused on LGBT rights, the kind of place that let me take on pro bono cases for trans teens kicked out of homes. Victor never complained when I worked late. Instead, he would have dinner waiting. Simple meals he cooked himself because he said the staff made everything taste like money. We fell into a rhythm. Mornings he read the Wall Street Journal while I reviewed case files. Evenings we walked Central Park, his hand occasionally brushing mine when no one was looking. The first time we kissed was after a particularly brutal day in court. I had lost a custody case for a young gay father. I came home shaking with rage and grief. Victor poured me a scotch, listened without interrupting, then pulled me into his arms. "You're fighting the good fight," he whispered. The kiss was gentle, almost hesitant, and when it ended we both looked surprised. "I didn't plan that," he said. "Neither had I, but it felt right." Publicly, we were the unlikely couple everyone whispered about. Tabloids called it the May-December merger. At galas, older men clapped Victor on the back while their wives gave me pitying smiles. I learned to smile back, to let Victor rest his hand on the small of my back like it belonged there. Inside, the age difference still stung sometimes. When we walked into rooms, people stared, and I caught the word gold digger more than once. My family finally called in year 3. My brother Derek showed up at the penthouse unannounced, eyes wide at the marble floors. "Dad's sick," he said. "We need money." I offered to help quietly, but Victor stepped in and wrote a check large enough to cover treatment and more. Derek took it without thanks. Later that night, I cried in Victor's arms for the first time. "They only want me now because of you," I said. He stroked my hair. "They lost the right to you long ago. I won't let them hurt you again." By year 5, I had maid partner at the firm. Victor's health was still strong, though he tired faster on our weekend trips to the Hamptons. We bought a small beach house together, our first joint decision that felt truly ours. One night on the deck under a sky full of stars, he said, "I think I'm falling in love with you, Ethan. Not the arrangement. You." I believed him. I said it back. The conspiracy, if there was one, felt like a distant shadow I could ignore. The next 5 years brought both triumph and the first real cracks. I became known in legal circles as the attorney who won landmark cases for same-sex parental rights. Victor's company expanded into AI ethics, and he let me consult on policy, proud to have a husband who actually understood justice. We marched in pride parades hand in hand, and for the first time, I felt visible without shame. But society never stopped testing us. At a black tie event in Washington, a senator's wife cornered me. "You're young enough to be his grandson. Don't you worry what people say?" I smiled politely. "I worry more about the laws we're still fighting to change." Victor overheard and later told me, "You handled that better than I would have at your age." His pride meant everything. My own family tried again in year 8. My father had passed, and my mother wanted to meet Victor. We flew to Ohio for a tense weekend. She hugged me tight, then turned to Victor with tears. "Thank you for taking care of my boy." Victor was gracious, but I saw the way my brother watched him, like a man counting future inheritance. On the flight home, Victor was quiet. "They still see me as the wallet," he said. I squeezed his hand. "I see you as my husband." The first real misunderstanding came when I found Victor on a late-night call in his study. He hung up quickly when I walked in. "Old business associate," he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. I let it go. We had bigger things. My first big Supreme Court brief, and Victor turning 76. We celebrated with a trip to Napa, where we renewed our vows privately. That night, he held me like I was the most precious thing in his world. Yet the cracks widened when a former colleague leaked to the press that our marriage had started as a financial arrangement. The story died quickly thanks to Victor's lawyers, but the damage lingered. I started questioning small things. Why Victor had known so much about my background before we met. Why certain documents in his safe were sealed with my father's old company name. I told myself it was paranoia. Love had grown real. That was what mattered. By year 15, the bond felt unbreakable, yet the shadows lengthened. Victor's health began to slip. Arthritis, a minor heart scare. I cut back my caseload to travel with him to Switzerland for treatments. In those quiet clinic gardens, we talked about everything. Regrets, dreams, the children we never had. "You're the family I chose," he told me. I believed every word. Work still called. I won a case that forced a major corporation to add domestic partner benefits nationwide. Victor threw a party at our Hamptons house, inviting every colleague I respected. That night, he danced with me slowly under string lights, and I felt 24 again. But the conspiracy stirred. I found encrypted files on his laptop labeled Reed Family 1998, the year my father had testified against Victor in a hostile takeover that destroyed Victor's first startup partner. I confronted him gently. Victor sighed. "Old history." Your father played dirty. I moved on. I accepted the answer because I wanted to. Then came the sacrifice. My firm offered me a senior partner track that would mean constant travel. I turned it down to stay home with Victor after his second heart procedure. He cried when I told him. No one has ever put me first like this, he whispered. In that moment, any lingering doubt vanished. We bought a vineyard in California as a retirement dream. Weekends there became our sanctuary, long walks, wine tastings, quiet nights where age didn't matter. I turned 44. Victor turned 86. The world still stared, but we had stopped caring. Or so I thought. The crisis hit in year 19. Victor suffered a stroke that left him weak on one side. Doctors warned the next one could be fatal. I moved us permanently to the California house, hired round-the-clock nurses, and became his full-time advocate. My law practice shifted to remote advocacy work so I could be by his side every day. During his recovery, Victor grew restless. He started making late calls again, the same ones I had noticed years earlier. One night, I overheard fragments. The will is ironclad, read son will never know. My blood ran cold. When I asked, he claimed it was estate planning. But trust cracked. Then Victor's adult children from a brief early marriage, 2 sons I had barely met, filed a petition to declare him incompetent. They claimed I had undue influence. Court dates loomed. I fought them with every legal skill I possessed, winning temporary guardianship. Victor held my hand in the hospital and said, "You're the only one who ever loved me for me." The misunderstanding peaked when I found the original contract from 20 years ago. It wasn't just convenience. Victor had sought me out specifically because of my father. The revenge angle was there in cold black ink. Marry the son, control the bloodline, deny the family any claim. I confronted him in his hospital bed. He didn't deny it. It started that way, he admitted, voice weak. But Ethan, I fell in love. That part was never a lie. I walked out into the California night, heart shattered. 20 years of memories replayed like a movie I could no longer trust. Year 20 ended where it had begun, in a courtroom, but this time the stakes were my entire life. Victor's sons presented evidence of the original arrangement, trying to break the will that left everything to me. I could have walked away, taken the settlement they offered, and let the empire crumble. Instead, I stood before the judge and told the truth. Your Honor, this marriage began as a transaction, but over 2 decades, it became the truest thing I have ever known. Victor Langford taught me what family means when blood failed me. He supported my career, held me through grief, and grew with me even as time tried to pull us apart. If love can survive secrets this deep, then perhaps forgiveness is the bravest act of all. Victor, now 91 and frail in his wheelchair, looked at me with tears in his eyes. The judge ruled in our favor. Later that night, on our cliffside deck, he took my hand. I planned revenge on your father, he said. I never planned on falling so completely in love with his son. I'm sorry, Ethan, for starting us in shadows. I forgave him, not because it erased the pain, but because 20 years had shown me that people are more than their worst decisions. We spent his final months planting roses in the vineyard, watching sunsets, and laughing at old stories. When he passed peacefully in my arms, I knew the love had been real. I sold the tech empire and used the proceeds to fund scholarships for young gay law students who faced the same rejection I once did. The vineyard became a retreat center for LGBTQ couples navigating age gaps and family wounds. Life moved forward, richer for every scar. True or false? Can a relationship born from financial desperation and hidden motives ever evolve into genuine, lasting love worthy of fighting for?